So I got a call from a major corporation. Everybody knows their name. I would imagine almost everybody has used their services. Got a call from them last night telling me we can't live off grid. So I'm going to explain all that. But first I wanted to show you my new solar panels and show you how I hooked them up to the new charge controller. Yesterday I kind of briefed you on the charge controller. So I got two 100 watt rich solar panels, which are the same as what I have in the past. I don't know if you can really tell on camera, but the new ones are taller but skinnier than the old ones by quite some bit. I don't know if it makes a difference. I would imagine it's the same amount of individual cells, the blue cells there. I didn't do anything too fancy this time because from experience I realized that Rich Solar's wiring, how they hook it all up, is very poor. So I just went ahead and did it my way. In the past, I had always used the clips that it came with. So here's one of the clips. I just snipped this off, and it comes attached like this. And so you get a female side on the negative or the positive, I'm not sure which, I forget, and then a male side. And so what you do is when you hook your wiring up, you're supposed to put the male to the female and the female to the male. So you're supposed to hook it up to your wiring. Well, I found out that doesn't work. They get corroded with copper wiring, and after a while they just stop working, so you end up clipping them off anyway. So I just started out with clipping them off. But the way they hook up, which is going to be hard to do with one hand, is I'll assemble them off camber here, the two pieces now, and they just click together. I'm not going to click them all the way. The thing is you buy them and they're like $10 a package. I think you get 5 males, 5 females. If you mess one of them up, it's no good because the crimp in there is distorted after you clamp them together. So it just wasn't worth the money to me. So what I did was I used some 12 gauge wire here. This is indoor wiring, 12-2 with ground. I know people are going to say, no, you need outdoor wiring and you need stranded wiring. This is solid wiring. What I mean by solid wiring is just one strand, 12 gauge. Whereas if you have DC on your car, it'll be multiple strands. Now, technically, you're supposed to use multiple strands with DC, but if you Google it, they say it really doesn't make any difference, and I agree, it just doesn't make that much difference. What it is the stranded wire has air. This is my understanding, I could be wrong, but it has air going in between each strand and helps keep them cooler. That's my understanding. But I'm not running that much amps through this for these to get that hot. You can see here that's labeled positive and negative. I hope you can see that. So you just hook your positive up to the positive and the negative up to the negative, and then you run it into the charge controller, which I'm going to show here in a minute. So I did that to both solar panels. But see, I can move these around now. So this morning, the sun popped up over the trees about 8:30. So I was able to move these around all day long according to the sun. Now you'll see that it's very cloudy, which is important to this video. I'm going to get into that. It's very cloudy today. Normally I would have problems, but not today. And it's not the solar panels that made all the difference. I'm going to explain this. So then I run my 2 wires, and I brought it into this ice cream container. Inside here is where I got all my connections. But then you'll see that I also hooked up my old solar panels. So what I did is I took 4 solar panels off the system. I had 10 total. So I took 4 off. That means now that I've got 12, I got 6 on one charge controller and 6 on the other charge controller. I have 2 charge controllers now. And this charge controller thing is what's making all the difference in the world. So then I connected all that, and then I run that 12 gauge into the charge controllers. So I'm going to take you into the camper. Now, the camper is getting ready to get ripped down. It's in bad shape. I mean, we've used it to house chickens. We've used it to house straw. So it's in bad shape. And that's why we got the new shed that we're going to transfer everything to. We're going to go this week and get some paint to paint the floor, and then we'll start transferring everything. But as I showed you yesterday, here's the new charge controller. It's just like the old one, same price as what I paid for the last one. This one's $95 with taxes. And then you can see that right here it says solar. You should be able to see that, and battery. So the two solar wires I have coming in, two positives, two negatives. With this much amps, I should have a 10 gauge wire. So I don't have 10 gauge anywhere around here, so I use two 12s, which is going to be more than enough. And I ran, you might be able to see that there's two white wires there going into it. You can definitely see two white wires coming out of it. So that's two 12 gauge wires versus one 10 gauge wire. It fit in there fine, so that's what I did. And I've got plenty of it, so there's no reason to go out and buy 10 gauge. And I'm just going to show you around a little bit. This one is a little bit better than my old one. They've modified it or improved it. It has a fan on it, so when it gets above 20 amps, the fan kicks on. On my old one, I have to run an external fan. It has a little backlighting. And you can see now that the solar panels are making 19 volts. And it's the charge controller is producing 6.4 or 6.3 amps. That is the conversion. What it does is it takes some of the voltage, because this is a 12 volt system, it takes some of the voltage and changes it to amps. This is what's so nice about the MPPT charge controller. Now everybody wants to know what name brand charge controller I have. That's it, that's all it is. There's a little identification number down here, Q0YCY00 or 00, I don't know. So right now, the charge controller is only taking 4.3 amps from the solar panels. It's converting some of the volts, 19, 20 volts, into amps. It's putting 5.7 amps into the batteries, even though it's taking 4.3. I really like MPPT charge controllers. The old ones, they would only get up to 14 volts, whereas your solar panels are producing 20 volts. It has to produce more volts than what your batteries need. Your batteries need 14 volts, 14.4 volts to be fully charged. So you can see here that the battery is at 14.4 volts. So the batteries are charged now. Now, there's some energy being taken right now and put into the house. There's some fans running. I would imagine the freezer is running. Remember, we have two charge controllers now. So each charge controller is producing 5 amps. So we're actually getting 10 amps into the house, which is about right, because that's what the freezer and the fans and all that take. I am going to recommend to everybody that if you hook up a charge controller and you have more than 25 amps of charge controller, that you buy a smaller charge controller like I have. This is a 60 amp charge controller as advertised, but it only produces 40. Now, I figured this all out. In the previous video, I told you that Amazon lied to me. They kind of lied. It's kind of false advertising. If you have a 24 volt system with this charge controller, it is a 60 amp charge controller. But if you have a 12 volt system like I have, it is a 40 amp charge controller. I was not aware of that when I bought it, the first one. Was not aware of it until just a few days ago, as a matter of fact, when I realized I needed a new charge controller. So what I have now is I have 60 total amps with all my solar panels. I got 30 going to one, 30 going the other, which is less than the 40 which the charge controller says it can use. Now, here's the thing about when you charge a battery. If you have a 100 amp hour battery, you can only put 25 amps in it per hour to recharge it. 25% of your battery's capacity is all you can put into it. So it is my assumption that these charge controllers are programmed at 25 amps. So when I run the well pump, I'm running 80 amps. The charge controller knows I'm running the well pump, so it will provide me with all the amps that I need, all that it can give me, which in the old days was 40 amps. But as soon as I shut off the well pump, the amperage would drop back down to, well, 27 is what it was said. I would imagine there's an issue with the way it meters what it's doing, but it's supposed to be, I would imagine, 25 amps. That's it. Even though I had 40 amps of solar panels or more, it would only give me 27. So it tells me the charge controller is programmed for a 100 amp hour battery. Well, I have 8 100 amp hour batteries. It means they have 800 amp hour battery because they're all connected. Well, when I bought 2 charge controllers, they both did the same thing. When it was sunnier this morning, just for a brief few minutes, I ran the well pump. Both of them, after I shut off the well pump, went down to 27. Well, one was 27, the new one was 25, so that tells me the gauge is wrong on the old one. So it went down to 25, which is what I expected. I figured they're programmed at 25 amps. So now I have 2, I'm actually getting 50 amps into my batteries. Out of a possible 60, I got 60 amps. I could get a third one actually and be in better shape, but I might do that later on. I probably would buy some more solar panels before I did that, or at the same time I would do that. And then I would just keep splitting them down half. So then I would have 14 solar panels. So I would put anywhere from between 4 and 5 solar panels per charge controller. That way, I'm always staying below that 25 amps per charge controller, getting the maximum amount. When you add the 2 together, you're getting 50 amps. So you added 3 of them together, that would be 75 amps. I'm recommending that if you're gonna have a large system, to split it off into multiple charge controllers. Now, the charge controllers all go in the same battery bank. There's 2 sets of systems here. I got 6 panels going in one charge controller, 6 panels going into the other charge controller, but both charge controllers go into all 8 batteries. So you can have multiple charge controllers on one battery bank. So today I have actually noticed a marketable improvement. I know I've got 10 more amps of solar panels. Each one of those new ones is 5 amps, so that's 10 more amps each. But it's been a cloudy day all day. What I've noticed though is I'm getting more amps in the battery, because just like I said that each charge controller only produces a maximum of 25 amps, it also regulates the amps based on the voltage of the battery. So this morning the battery started out 12.3 volts when I started charging, and throughout the day the voltage rises up to 14.4. As it's charging, the voltage goes up. Conversely though, in the morning you're getting maximum amount of amperage put into the batteries, but as the batteries charge, the amperage drops like that. So let's say you're at midpoint and you're charging your batteries and you're at midpoint, let's say 13.6. It's not at 14, it's not at 12. So as you're at 13.6, your amperage has dropped on your charge controller to say from 25 to 15. Just using that as an example. So voltage went up, amperage went down. So you're at 15 amps. Even though you have 50 amps of solar panels, you're only getting 15 into the batteries. Again, I don't think the charge controller knows how many batteries I have, how many amp hours of batteries I have. So now I have 2 charge controllers. Each one of them says 13.6 volts, and each one of them is producing 15 amps. So yesterday, I was only getting 15 amps, but today I got 30, because 15 plus 15 is 30. So I doubled it. It just makes more sense to have multiple charge controllers because they all are regulating, just like a battery charger in your car. You charge in a battery, which I have car battery chargers. That's what I charge them with when I run in a generator. Walmart has battery chargers. I actually get mine off Amazon. As the voltage increases, the amperage decreases. So to correct that problem, I always run 2 battery chargers. That way I can get them charged up faster. And so as the voltage goes up, the amperage comes down on both of them at the same time. So I'm doubling the amperage. And I'm not risking burning up the batteries because I have plenty of battery bank. It just makes more sense. And I think now that I've learned this, anytime I get, say, 30 amps of solar panels, I think is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to keep it around that, so maybe 6 at a time. I'll get another charge controller. I ran the well pump today, and the batteries are already charged, and it's at noon. Now, there's a slight advantage. Even though it's cloudy, the solar panels are producing more voltage because as it gets hot, the solar panels lose efficiencies. So over 78 degrees, you lose, I think, 0.5%. I think it's 0.5% of voltage for every 2 degrees over 78 degrees. Well, it's cloudy, so it's cooler today. The sun isn't heating the panels up as badly. So I'm getting more voltage. But also, both charge controllers are producing the same amount of amps, whereas before it wouldn't have done that. So my batteries are already charged at noontime. Yesterday, at full sun, running the well pump, everything was identical yesterday, except I had one charge controller, and the batteries didn't charge up until 2 to 3 o'clock, somewhere around there. It's been a big difference. Now, yesterday's video, which I'll put an up next box at the end of this video to that video, I told you FedEx didn't bring my solar panels yesterday. Well, it got pretty late, about 5 o'clock, and I was just upset. I really wanted my solar panels, as you saw in yesterday's video. So I called FedEx, and I told them I knew FedEx. As soon as I saw FedEx was delivering these panels, I would not get them today. And I left a message. Well, they called me back, and they said, well, we'll make sure that you get updated text messages. But he says, sometimes things like this happen. And I said, it's not sometimes. It's every time FedEx brings me an order, it's late. Every time they promise you, FedEx promises me a date, it's late. The guy just doesn't want to drive out this far, so he waits until there's multiple packages. I said, these are solar panels. I have to have them today. I was pretending like it was under contract or something. I mean, I implied some stuff, but I didn't outright lie. But I needed them today. And the reason I wanted them yesterday so bad was because I knew it was going to cloud up today, and I wasn't going to get to test them as well as I wanted to. Turns out, the test did well anyways, regardless of it being cloudy or not. And he says, well, and you have to understand things happen that you always can't make deliveries. And I said, are you telling me I can't live off solar panels? And he says, well, not today. This is why I live off grid, because I cannot stand companies like that. So if you'll click this up next box, take yesterday's video where I was upset about FedEx. So if I can inspire you to continuously improve your dream. Thanks for watching.